When I walk into a lot of organizations, and I'm very, very fortunate, and WWT puts me in front of all sorts of interesting people, I walk in, my first question pretty much is, how can I kill you? In a digital world, how can I kill you inside 24 hours?
I think that it's really important to sort of like test your plan A first as well and verify your plan A. So oftentimes, with supply chain, other risks and resiliency of your systems, your critical infrastructure, it's really important to understand what it is that you have. And not only what you have, but are your systems resilient enough?
And it's about how to maintain operational control over the integrity and the resilience of our digital system, our data, and our infrastructure. So it's not about vendors, it's not about where location of the data, it's not about is it a hybrid or is it in the cloud, but it's the premise behind it is how to maintain operational control.
So we're talking Arctic, right? And as I look back at my career, when we thought about the region, it was high altitude, low tension. That era has changed, right? So when we look at the North, it's a place where we are looking at territorial ambition, mineral security, and of course the unconventional pressure of allies.
I ran a 3-hour workshop a couple of months ago at a different conference, and it literally was a 3-hour workshop. We ran 9 tabletop exercises in that 3-hour workshop because they're simple ones. They don't have to be complicated, but they very quickly expose where the very easy things are to go, we could look at that, we could fix that, we could do something about that very quickly. Forgot we were in chairs. I can't mansplain, otherwise everybody's going to see the vegetables.
I did not realize we had an outfit.
With the bright white legs.
Well, good morning.
Morning.
Morning. Good to see you all. So I am starting to wonder why I'm in this seat, and I don't know if it has anything to do with me being an American, but let's see. So we're talking Arctic, right? And as I look back at my career, when we thought about the region, it was high altitude, low tension. That era has changed, right? So when we look at the North, it's a place where we are looking at territorial ambition, mineral security, and of course the unconventional pressure of allies. So as we talk about sovereignty, which in the past was not just a line, in the past was a line drawn on the map. Today it's resilience. And as the geopolitical environment is changing, how do we think about security, not just about defending ourselves from adverse actors, but about our unpredictable allies, potentially south of the border? So let's jump right in, Sami. Looking at you there, we're looking at NORAD. NORAD is responsible for protecting the North. Canada has invested $38 billion plus in securing those assets. How are we leveraging our new Bill C-8 to ensure that these assets remain in sovereign Canadian jurisdiction and that we don't have the dependencies? Our technology doesn't necessarily depend on our ally south of the border.
Well, thanks, Andrea, for what a packed question to start the day. Touches on the Arctic, touches on digital sovereignty, touches on geopolitics. So I'll try to answer it in a bit of a concise way, recognizing that we can talk about that for hours. From a cybersecurity perspective, everything we're seeing, all the indicators are pointing up. The volume of incidents, the variety of incidents, the velocity at which they come to us. We're also seeing an increase. So so I sit in the center of the federal government as the senior official for cybersecurity. So I have a bit of visibility over all of the incidents that get reported to the cyber center. There's an increased number of incidents affecting the North, the Arctic, the 3 northern territories. Unfortunately, it's a repeat thing. So we, 2 years ago, we took the unusual step on getting authorization to deploy some of our sensors in a proactive way on those 3 Northern Territory infrastructure as a way of protecting them without having to wait for incidents to happen. So that takes care of at least some of the infrastructure. But we're also seeing, unfortunately, ransomware incidents affecting them in the north. To the second element of your question about digital sovereignty, the government has recently released a paper on Canada.ca that talks about digital sovereignty. And it's meant to be a thought piece. So it's not a policy, it's not a regulation. It's simply to say, this is how the government is thinking about digital sovereignty. And it's about how to maintain operational control over the integrity and the resilience of our digital system, our data, and our infrastructure. So it's not about vendors, it's not about where location of the data, it's not about is it a hybrid or is it in the cloud, but it's the premise behind it is how to maintain operational control. And it goes through some ideas about operational control, and we can get into the risk elements later on. You mentioned that we live in a borderless world. Geography doesn't matter when it comes to cyber. We definitely don't live in a bubble. What happens in Ukraine affects us. What happens in Taiwan affects us. What happens between India and Pakistan affects us in a way that cyber will move around. We saw the recent attacks on critical infrastructure in Poland. That too, what prevents something like that from ending up on Canadian infrastructure. So the government tabled Bill C-8. For those who follow the history of Bill C-8, it used to be known as Bill C-26 before it died on the order table. And it will affect critical infrastructure once it passes and it gets not just royal assent, but the effective date of that bill, most likely maybe in about 1.5 to 2 years. So it might pass this summer, but we still have to work with all of the critical infrastructure sectors. So predominantly finance, transportation, energy, and telecommunication to set the parameters over things like incident reporting and cybersecurity plans. So these are things that we look forward to working with the community to make sure that the resilience, the word that you used also, is at the core of what we do to make sure that at the very least we minimize the impact of those incidents. We can't completely stop them. We can't say, oh, if you implement everything, it's going to be 0% incidents in Canada, but at least reduce the attack surface and reduce the impact of them. So hopefully I touched on a lot of these things that you in your opening comment, but if I forgot, I'm sure we'll have a second round.
So I wanted to follow up on the dependency on the technologies of other allies.
Yes.
How do we ensure that we're not having a concentration risk there?
So concentration risk is absolutely one of the risks that we have outlined in that paper on digital sovereignty. It's not about kicking everything that is not made in Canada. So that's the premise. So we have to use technology that is built in other places. So, but at least we have to know whether we maintain operational control over our tech stack. So, we're not going to start building maybe hard drives in Canada and memory chips in Canada and all these things to say that we are 100% Canadian tech stack. But do I maintain operational control? And I think within government, we have to go through that. We have to understand the jurisdictional laws. We have to better understand, what is the impact of, the laws in other countries when we use their technology. But that's an exercise that we are going through. And I would invite, the CISOs in the private sector to start looking at some of those risks too, to understand. I mean, the paper is meant to be for government, but it's also meant to be a thinking piece for everybody that's out there to look at data, to look at security, privacy, to look at things like workforce and skills. We rely a lot on help that maybe is not in Canada. So do we have the capacity to develop that workforce in Canada to be able to sustain that continuity of operation in the event of something were to happen? So So these are all consideration that we outline in that paper.
Thank you for that. So, Sherry, I'm going to come over to you because we talked about resilience, and the Treasury Board is essentially the architect of Canada's enterprise resilience. And as we look at the Arctic and our digital connectivity there, we really have a zero margin for error, right? So as we think about potential cyber skirmishes or cable cuts, something like that could really bring a systematic failure potentially across the nation. What is our plan B?
Well, I'm not going to speak on behalf of the Treasury Board, so I'm speaking of my own personal circumstances, I guess, and experience. But to what Sami said, I mean, Bill C-8 is being tabled. There's also amendments to the Telecommunications Act. And I think that some of those things are really being put in place to sort of look at different other situations in which we can look at plan Bs. But I think that it's really important to sort of like test your plan A first as well, and verify your plan A. So oftentimes, with supply chain, other risks and resiliency of your systems, your critical infrastructure, it's really important to understand what it is that you have. And not only what you have, but like, are your systems resilient enough? Are you, we're diminishing telecommunication network and sort of like that whole cable chain, if you will, the optic world, because we have the big 2, 3, or whatever in Canada, and then also globally, everybody has the big 2 or 3 or 4. And I think that, though that margin is narrowing in terms of network connectivity, and I think that we still need that diversification of connectivity. So it's really important, I think, for like, Canada or anybody else to sort of have that, connectivity thought process to say, let's diversify our connection to the world in multiple different ways. And that means making sure that your plan A is resilient, and that you actually have a plan A that you've tested and sound. So what's your contracts? What's your supply chain? How are you actually showing up for that system and making sure that the critical system that you're in, that you're caring for, whether it's in the north or anywhere else, is actually resilient enough, and that you've actually got the I guess you could say the plan Bs in place for that. But I think you need a C, D, E, F, G, H, all of that in terms of your planning. And again, we got to dust off the disaster recovery plans and the BCPs and the BIAs and the ABCs, and kind of look at all of that stuff and say, where are we with that? Because most people say, yeah, check in the box, we have it. And then you don't test it. Nobody has actually refined it for years. And all of a sudden, you have an issue, and then you're like, where is that now? And we've got that stored somewhere, and we need to bring that out and see if that still works according to plan. But by that time, there's evolution. We are evolving very, very rapidly in the world of tech, in the world of AI, and we have to keep up our plans and our systems and how we're actually showing up for those resilient systems every single day. So we have to think about all of those things. Like, it can't be, we had something that worked 10 years ago, so therefore it must still work. It doesn't. So we've got to be more agile in how we're actually protecting citizens' data. We've got to be more agile in how we're protecting citizens everywhere, especially in the north. And I mean, I'm from Labrador, so I can certainly say to you that telecommunications in Labrador and telecommunications in Toronto are very different things. And the reason why I say that is because when you have northern communities and other sort of geographically smaller areas, those big telecommunication companies don't provide the same level of SLA and service, right? So, I mean, you don't have the same amount of, sort of uptime, and your SLAs are not quite the same. And then, general citizens don't have the same level of service as somebody in Toronto would, because it's just the way it is in the north, right? I mean, getting fiber and all these other things to very remote communities is difficult, and it's also quite expensive. So as a result of that, that's not the I say economic share for telecommunication companies. So therefore, they don't put in a lot of effort into that, and it takes a lot of I think partnerships from not only government, but, provincial governments and everybody else to sort of make that happen for them. So, I hate to say it, but I mean, I think that, the northern folks, including people from Labrador, are really, really resilient because they're used to having downtime. They're used to not having connectivity. And so as a result of that, I mean, I think it's a little bit different when we think about it.
But as you're talking about these plan Bs and Cs and playbooks and updating the various business continuity plans, how should the CISOs think about it? Because a lot of the dependency is on some of the government-provided links, right? So how do they create that resiliency? What are the things they should be thinking about?
Well, I mean, I think that everybody's got to go back to the basics again, right? I mean, we say this over and over and over again for the last 20 years or so. And we still have to go back to the basics. Like, we have to understand what it is that you have. Is it critical? Is it deemed critical enough that you need to put the money, the support, and also the service in place to maintain that criticality? And you need to understand what it is that you're actually protecting, and then go there first and then evolve, right? Because I mean, we have evolution of technology. We need to evolve with the times. So again, it's like sort of stepping back and saying, let's just revisit the business, revisit what it is that we have, and see what's actually the most important thing, and make sure you secure that most important thing. And then,
Foundation is still a thing you're being built.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's vital now that we think about that, because I mean, we're in a very different time. Like I would say the book on world order has been rewritten, and we have a new author, and how that actually translates to the world is it's unpredictability. We live in a world of unpredictability. We cannot sort of think that we have to stay within certain guardrails, because those guardrails are kind of like taken down a little bit, right? So we need to build our own set of guardrails that's meaningful for whatever it is that you're protecting. And then, again, too, I think that we owe it to the North and everybody else that probably don't have the same market share as we do in terms of connectivity and uptime to support them as much as possible.
Now, like agility, that's sometimes not brought up enough. I think it's a critical thought to keep in mind. So we're going to move over to you, Chris. You're really well known for your outfits, but you're even more known for sharing with us the vulnerabilities that may be present in our systems.
Yes.
And so we heard Sami share with us that, there's a rush to digitize the North. We are sending sensors up to make sure that we have our presence stated, that we understand what's happening. But with all that,
the challenge with any of this stuff is it's great to understand what's happening, but exactly to Sherry's point, what do you do next? And I think that's where I would almost say globally, we are still going, well, we should maybe run a tabletop this year. We'll get round to it one day, or no problem, 6 months' time. 6 months' time, things have changed. 6 days' time, things have changed. The orange-haired idiot down south keeps changing. And I can say that, by the way, one, because I live in that neck of the woods, and secondly, I don't report into the government. Sorry, thank you. Now, whether I can get back into the US on Friday or not will now depend upon whether the aforementioned Womble is actually, watching. But I think it's, for all of the challenges and all the issues that we've talked about from a global standpoint, I think one of the biggest frustrations that I see is we still are staying in the old, to some degree, we're still in the old ways. We're still very much, we'll get something done eventually. Well, it's like, no, either you put a tiger team in place, and that tiger team takes a step back from the core organization. It's almost like a red team to some degree. They take a step back, 2 or 3 people, and rapidly go, hey, here's where we've identified an issue. Here's where we've seen an issue. Up north, we saw a sensor go out. Somebody thought it was maybe a cable cut. Don't worry about it. Well, let's play that scenario through. Let's play the what ifs. Let's play the game, but let's do it quickly. I ran a 3-hour workshop a couple of months ago at a different conference, and it literally was a 3-hour workshop. We ran 9 tabletop exercises in that 3-hour workshop, because they're simple ones. They don't have to be complicated, but they very quickly expose where the very easy things are to go, we could look at that, we could fix that, we could do something about that very quickly. You then take that back into the organization, rapidly prioritize, like, oh, okay, yeah, that'll be a quick one. That's a quick one. That's a third-party one. That's a risk with, hey, we've got everything going down to a service provider in the US. Okay, good, bad, fugly. What's our backup? What happens if I kick that cable? What happens if geopolitics changes? How do I and what do I have in place? The US banking system is going through a whole redundancy conversation at the moment, big time. They're like, hey, your primary provider is X. Who's the backup? And by the way, you need to have that in place. Active, passive, whatever else it needs to be. But that takes time. That takes effort. And the problem is 6 months worth of faffing around asking questions is not going to be effective when, as we've all said, and everybody sees this, every single day, a certain individual down south wakes up and wonders what exactly shit he can stir up next. And that's his modus operandi. I think we forget that. We look at it and go, oh my gosh, it's terrible. Well, no, that's just who he is. He is the instigator. Great, let him be the instigator. Now let's go, nice, have that little storm. What can we do? It's the big one.
Perhaps using that instigation to get or prepare it.
Shit together.
Let's get going. And maybe that's sometimes what we need is that wake up call.
I think it's that. It's also, when you think about it, you have a very, very visually media hungry, whatever you want to call him, instigator. Yet to the conversations we've had, the North is not that conversation. The North is a very, very subtle conversation. This war's been going, and it is a war, let's face it. This war's been going on for the last 30, 40 years. And it's gone from a very traditional, there's a trawler and it's doing EOCID, or there's this, or there's explorations, or there's this, or there's all these. And now it's digital, it's easier.
So you mentioned, getting more prepared, tabletops. We have a lot of leaders in this room who have to brief the boards, make sure that they have the funding they need, make sure the enterprise is prepared for potential resilient situations. What are the things that these leaders can do today besides watching the news? What are the key risk indicators they should perhaps be monitoring for? And what are some of the top ones that you can think of that they should definitely be implementing as part of their review with the board?
I got to be honest. I think the first one is go look in the mirror. It's got nothing to do with anything else, but go look in the mirror and be honest with yourself. When I walk into a lot of organizations, and I'm very, very fortunate, and WWT puts me in front of all sorts of interesting people, I walk in, my first question pretty much is, how can I kill you? In a digital world, how can I kill you inside 24 hours? Ask that to yourselves. Ask that to each other of you. And then admit to yourselves that, no, we don't have all the answers. Rather than going, it'll be okay. We'll deal with it tomorrow. It'll be fine. We are compliant. I don't give a rat's ass if you're compliant. I'm still going to walk in. I'm still going to take all of your assets. The question is how quickly will you understand that? And how quickly can you recover? That's it.
Sure. I find sometimes that our biggest enemy is complacency. And I hear it often from companies who say, especially in the small and medium-sized business, why would anybody come after me? And I think that this is completely the wrong attitude to take. They'll come after you whether you like it or not. And as Chris said, they don't care. And where they can inflict damage, they should inflict damage. So please protect your livelihood, protect your communities, protect your business. There's a lot of good advice and guidance being put out there. There's a lot of alerts being put out there. Pay attention to them. If you're getting your news from the news, then it's too late. So it needs to be a little bit proactive. I think specifically to the CISOs in the room when they go back to their offices and think about the premise of the panel being around digital sovereignty and what are we doing about it, I would say that your lawyer should be your best friend at this point, because you need to look at sort of things like jurisdictional and legal exposure. Who reads the entire, agreement. Just you scroll to the bottom, you press OK, and you move on. Maybe it's time to read it and figure out what's in the fine print. So get the lawyers involved. Look at your concentration risk. Unfortunately, we've built over the years a concentration risk in terms of vendors that it's difficult to undo today, but at least understand what is your concentration risk.
Okay, supply chain and third party and all of those.
Yeah.
Look at your data stewardship. Where is the data stored? Do you have control over it? Where is the data transiting? Where is your backups? And if you can encrypt at rest, that's an extra layer of protection. And lastly, but most importantly, I would say it's the people. Who are you relying on to run your organization? Are you relying on, help that is outside of your organization, or are you developing the skills internally? So to me, those are the 4 risks that maybe CISO can take back and start thinking about them in terms of getting ready for the next disruption that we will have.
Thank you. So we're almost out of time, but I do want to ask a question because there is all this feedback we were providing to the CISOs of the things they can do. What can you do for them? How do we ensure that there is real-time information sharing? How are we providing the information to these leaders to make sure that they're getting it early enough and not after the fact, not days, weeks? How is that real-time information sharing being developed and that exchange of intelligence happening between the public and private sector?
So I would say that from the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity, it's absolutely important to reach out, to sign up for the alerts, to be part of the mailing list, but really to be part of all of the communication that comes out, to know what sector you're in, because they put on a lot of alerts specific to sectors. So we don't know who's out there if we don't have them in our CRM system. So please, if you have not connected with the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity, do so. I mean, cyber.gc.ca would be the website I would invite you to, or come and talk to me at one of the breaks, and I'll put you in touch. But we also in government have to lean more forward. Yes, we are sort of declassifying information, we're putting out alert, but I realize we need to do more. So it takes 2 to tango, both from a government perspective, but also from the private sector, to trust us in this partnership.
I'm going to push you a little bit more. You're saying we need to do more. Will you be doing more?
We will be doing more. It's cultural. So it's the biggest challenge we have in an organization. It's the Cyber Center grew up out of CSE, which tended to be an organization that never admitted it even existed. So now that we are out there, now that we're talking about what we do, it takes time, but I think we need to accelerate the pace of that communication.
We're out of time, but I do want to give you a little, the last thought if you wanted to share.
Well, I mean, I was just saying, like, even, expanding on that, like public safety has a lot of great information as well. And I mean, I think that you need to go back and say, at the end of the day, if we have an outage and our critical systems go down, not for 10 minutes, but 24 hours or so, what do we do? So, I mean, have your plans in place. I mean, even the simplest communication plan to sort of reach out to everybody that's like, you need to have on speed dial, essentially. Like, a lot of these things are not updated. So the question is when the board comes to you and says, what are we doing next? You better have a plan in place to say, this is what we're doing next. And, there's going to be a time when that outage might be there, right? So you have to plan for that, because I think that now everything is on the table. It's all on the table. So I think if we haven't had a wake-up call, it's time to have the wake-up call.
So I think we can say that the North that used to be a remote frontier is key and critical to our security and economic thrive. And as we share with our CISOs, going back to the table, resilience and agility is really what stands between our business continuity and systematic failure. Would that be the good takeaway?
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. I really appreciate your insights.
Thank you.
And talk to you all soon. Thank you.
Thank you.